The vacation photographs tell a simple story: blue water, palm trees, smiling relatives gathered around resort tables. Looking at those pictures now, nobody would guess how much tension sat just outside the frame. The family had rented part of a coastal resort for a week-long reunion. 3 generations arrived from different states. Cousins who hadn't seen each other in years shared meals. Grandchildren raced between pools. From a distance, everything looked easy. It wasn't. The first sign appeared on the second day. Margaret noticed conversations ending when she approached. Not every conversation. Just enough, a subtle shift, a hesitation. People remained polite, but something felt different. At first, she assumed she was imagining it. Family vacations often created awkward social dynamics. People formed temporary groups. Schedules overlapped imperfectly. There was no reason to assume anything was wrong. Then she noticed her daughter. Olivia seemed unusually comfortable moving between those conversations. She lingered beside lounge chairs, ginged private discussions, left with relatives who rarely spent time together otherwise. None of that was suspicious on its own. What troubled Margaret was the pattern. Each day the distance grew slightly larger. Invitations arrived later. Plans reached her secondhand. People who normally greeted her warmly now seemed cautious, not hostile, careful, as though they had recently learned something that altered their perspective. Margaret never confronted anyone. Instead, she watched. Years of parenting had taught her that direct confrontation often revealed less than observation. By the fourth day, she had formed a theory. Stories were circulating, not dramatic accusations, something quieter, more effective, interpretations, versions of old family events, memories presented from a single angle. The realization hurt more than she expected, because she knew where those stories were likely coming from. Olivia, her daughter, was 34 now, successful, independent, intelligent, also carrying wounds Margaret had never fully understood. Their relationship had been strained for years, not explosive, distant. The kind of distance that develops gradually until nobody remembers exactly when it began. Margaret knew she wasn't a perfect mother. There had been mistakes, years of long work hours, missed events, poor timing, bad decisions made under pressure. She accepted those things. What she struggled with was becoming a villain inside stories she barely recognized. The pressure finally surfaced one afternoon beside the main pool. Several relatives sat beneath large umbrellas sharing drinks and conversation. Laughter drifted across the water. As Margaret approached, the energy shifted immediately. Not dramatically, just enough. A silence, then someone changed the subject. The pattern had become impossible to ignore. She took a seat anyway. Nobody was rude, but nobody seemed comfortable either. Across the table, Olivia avoided eye contact. For several minutes, conversation stumbled forward awkwardly. Then an older voice interrupted. Something feels strange this week. Everyone turned. The speaker was Eleanor, Margaret's aunt, 82 years old, sharp-minded, impossible to intimidate. She had known every branch of the family for decades. More importantly, she had witnessed many of the events now being discussed secondhand. Nobody responded immediately. Eleanor continued, "I keep hearing stories." Several people shifted uncomfortably. She wasn't angry, just observant. And every story seems to have one thing in common. The table became still. They only start halfway through. No one spoke. Eleanor looked toward Olivia, not accusingly, being, "You've told people about the recital your mother missed." Olivia lowered her eyes. Eleanor nodded. "That happened." Then she continued, "But you rarely mentioned she drove through the night after her meeting ended because she was trying to make it." Silence. Eleanor turned toward another relative. "And you've repeated the story about the family move." A pause. "But not the reason it happened. The atmosphere changed, not because anyone had been caught lying, because context was suddenly entering the room." Eleanor folded her hands. "I've noticed something." Her voice remained calm. "When people are hurt, they often remember the pain clearly." No one disagreed. "But they sometimes forget everything surrounding it." Margaret remained silent. She hadn't asked for this intervention, wouldn't have, yet she recognized what was happening. For the first time, multiple versions of the same history were entering the conversation. Olivia finally looked up. Her expression wasn't defensive, it was conflicted, the look of someone encountering information that doesn't fit neatly inside an existing narrative. Margaret spoke for the first time. Carefully, "I know I disappointed you." Her daughter's eyes met hers. "I probably disappointed you more than I realized." The words settled over the table. No rehearsed speech followed, no emotional monologue, just honesty. Then Margaret added something she had spent years avoiding. "But disappointment isn't always the whole story." Nobody interrupted, because everyone understood that wasn't an argument, it was an invitation to see a larger picture. The conversation continued for nearly an hour. Not perfectly, not comfortably. But honestly, people remembered details, added context, corrected assumptions, questioned old conclusions. By evening, the atmosphere around the resort felt different, not lighter, more complicated, which was probably closer to the truth. The vacation continued. Families still gathered for meals. Children still played by the water. Photographs were still taken. But something fundamental had changed. The simple story no longer existed. Months later, if someone asked what happened during that trip, nobody could point to a dramatic confrontation. There wasn't one. What happened was quieter. A family discovered that understanding another person requires more than collecting moments that support a conclusion. And a mother and daughter found themselves standing in an uncomfortable place between blame and understanding, neither fully right, neither fully wrong. For the first time in years, that uncertainty felt less like a failure and more like the beginning of a conversation that still needed to happen.